There are few stars you can give personal credit for defining Black Hollywood, but Sidney Poitier is one of a kind. Let's explore the world before Black Hollywood through Sidney Poitier and see how he came out on the other side. Sidney Poitier was born on February 20, 1927, in Miami, Florida. He was born 2 months premature when his parents were on a business trip there, and it wasn't likely that he would survive, but his family nursed him to health. He spent his early years on Cat Island in the Bahamas, since his parents, Evelyn and Reginald Poitier, owned a farm there. Growing up in poverty, Poitier faced numerous challenges, including racial discrimination and limited access to education. While we consider Sidney to be African American, the ancestry of his surname shows that he is likely Haitian, and that his ancestors escaped Haiti from slave labor under French occupation. At the age of 15, Poitier moved to the United States to live with his brother. This was in 1942, when the Jim Crow era was still in full swing in Florida. As a result, he struggled to acclimate to the environment. He then moved to New York City because he wanted to be an actor. He worked odd jobs as a dishwasher and janitor to make ends meet while auditioning at different theaters. Sidney didn't finish his early education, so he couldn't read the script at his first audition and subsequently failed it. A Jewish waiter he worked with at the restaurant sat with him every night and taught him how to read using the newspaper. For a brief moment, he had lost some belief in himself and his acting ability. He enlisted in the military during World War II by lying about his age. He later faked a condition and was discharged. Upon his return, he re-auditioned at the same theater that previously rejected him and finally landed a role. Even though he had the heart of the casting directors, he did not have the heart of his audience. African American theaters at the time were really big on singing and musicals. However, Sidney was tone-deaf and a terrible singer. He also had a strong and noticeable Bahamian accent, which people believed was distracting when he was supposed to be playing an American character. He spent half a year working on his American accent and doing vocal practices. When he returned, he got a lead role in the production Lisi Strata, which ran for a failing 4 days. However, this was the role that enabled him to become the understudy of his acting mentor, Anna Lucasta. Poitier's breakthrough came in 1950 when he landed his first significant film role in No Way Out, where he portrayed a doctor treating a white supremacist. His performance garnered critical acclaim. It led to many more interesting and more prominent roles. In 1951, he traveled to South Africa, a country still struggling under apartheid rule, to film Cry the Beloved Country. Throughout the 1950s and 1960s, Poitier continued to challenge racial stereotypes with his roles. In 1958, he made history by becoming the first African-American actor to win an Academy Award for Best Actor for his performance in Lilies of the Field. That same year, he also became the first African-American to ever win a Golden Globe in its 20 years of running. Sidney's role in the American Civil Rights Movement cannot be understated. Even though he was just an actor, his representation of Black people in the film is considered a worthy contribution to the fight for equality, especially equal representation and treatment of Black people in the media. The same year that MLK gave his "I Have a Dream" speech was the same year he won the Golden Globe and Academy Awards. In hindsight, it may appear that the institutions only recognized his contributions to film history to save face in the public eye, but it nonetheless acknowledged his worthy acting talents and paved the way for many African American actors who came after him. He was a real African American actor who wasn't being subjected or even subjecting himself to playing in minstrel shows. However, his acting career did attract some criticism. Some described his role as, definitively, Uncle Tom, meaning that he played a Black character with no African American personality traits at all. His characters didn't really represent Black people more than the fact that Sidney was Black. The characters he played were often scrubbed of any way in which growing up African in America would affect their personality or mannerisms. Critics argued that this played into respectability politics and often encouraged the idea that the only African Americans who should be treated humanely should behave in the same postured way as the character Sidney played. In some ways, the criticism was valid, but there was a huge lack of positive representations of African American people in the media at the time, and Sidney helped to change that. He once commented, "I felt like I was representing 15, 18 million people with every move I made. If the fabric of the society were different, I would scream to high heaven to play villains and to deal with different images of Negro life that would be more dimensional. But I'll be damned if I do that at this stage of the game." He specifically refused to play certain roles because he feared they would play into negative stereotypes about Black people at the time. Click the subscribe button and notification bell if you think Sidney is, in fact, a Black Hollywood icon, and to keep finding out about even more of them. The dazzling hidden history of Black Hollywood awaits you. Sidney was a prominent member of many Black arts communities and civil rights groups. He was so prominent that he made an enemy out of himself to many anti-Black groups. In the late 60s, he was tasked with transporting money to support the Freedom Summer Volunteers with Belafonte. On the way, they were ambushed by KKK members and narrowly escaped with the help of the SNCC. Approaching his later years in life, Sidney began to roll back the number of films he appeared in a year and accept his reputation as a civil rights icon and film history legend more and more. He did a lot more interviews than films, and his film rules were kept quite small. He also starred as himself in documentaries about America, Old Hollywood, and the Civil Rights Movement, and documentaries specifically about himself. His last official film roles were Mr. Warmth and the Last Brickmaker in America in 2001, when he was 74 years old. After this, he made an appearance on Larry King Live in 2008. He focused on authoring his books, This Life and The Measure of Man, a spiritual autobiography. In the 90s, he experimented with a career in directing films, although he later decided against it. He directed the films Stir Crazy and Uptown Saturday Night. Sidney passed away on January 6, 2022, at the age of 94 in Beverly Hills, California. For years leading up to his passing, he struggled with heart problems, Alzheimer's, dementia, and prostate cancer. He beat the prostate cancer diagnosis in 1993, but it still left his body in bad shape. According to his death certificate, his main cause of death was heart failure. Sidney had an estimated net worth of $20 million by the time of his passing. His net worth and estate were left to his family. In 1950, he married Juanita Hardy, and they bought a New York home to raise their family in. It sits atop a hill in the middle of Stuyvesant, New York. The home has 6 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms. The backyard spans across fields into the woods with no other home nearby for miles. The home also has a game room including a pool table, poker table, and open bar. The home also has 2 living rooms and a sauna. 9 years into his marriage, he began an affair with Diahan Carroll. When Juanita found out about this, she filed for divorce and moved out of the home. The house was sold and has since been converted into an Airbnb. In 1976, he married Joanna Shimkus, his co-star in the film The Lost Man. They had 2 daughters together, Annika and Sidney. They stayed married until his death. They lived in his Beverly Hills home, which was a huge stylistic upgrade compared to his first home. In 2022, Joanna interviewed with Better Homes and Gardens to detail the inspiration for her Mediterranean architectural style. The house is decorated in floral patterns and 18th century antiques with Italian and Greek inspirations. Joanna believes that she has one of the few celebrity homes that embrace maximalism as part of their interior design, accepting the shape of the home and filling it with all the things she loves. Sidney and Juanita had 4 daughters together named Beverly, Pamela, Sherry, and Gina. Pamela followed in her father's footsteps and pursued a career in acting, appearing in the film Stir Crazy in 1980 and Ghost Dad in 1990. Her career didn't see the same bolstering success as her father's, and she rarely acts, taking sporadic roles throughout the years. Beverly is an author. In 2001, she released a children's book named Nana, which has achieved very positive audience reviews. She mainly manages her jewelry line, Poitier Henderson. Gina Poitier passed away suddenly in 2018 at the age of 57. She was a fashion designer and ran her boutique, Bejaï Designs. Annika, his daughter from his second marriage, is a film director, actress, and film editor. She is also the co-founder of ASP & Company. Sidney owned vintage Cadillacs and a Ford Fairlane 500. These are the cars similar to what his character would drive in the heat of the night. However, these cars are now considered a luxury and not fit to be driving around in on a daily basis. Instead, his daily car was a black Mercedes-Benz and a Jaguar. He specifically owns a 2010 Mercedes-Benz S-Class. In an incident with his Mercedes in 2010 at the age of 83, Sidney Poitier was involved in a minor car crash on Sunset Boulevard. He was driving his black Mercedes when it collided with a silver Porsche. Fortunately, Sidney was not injured and neither was the other driver. Click on this next video and learn more about another icon Black Hollywood wouldn't exist without. What's your favorite Sidney Poitier film?